Thanks again, everyone, for joining. It's a pleasure to welcome Caroline Hale, who's going to be leading the session today. Caroline qualified with PricewaterhouseCoopers back in 2001, and she spent a little bit of time in audit and then moved into industry with some large corporates, and then was the FD of her family business, which is an SME. And since 2017, she's been providing portfolio FD and CFO services to SMEs. So today she's going to share with us some tips, benefit from her experience on if you're looking to make the transition from a full-time permanent role to a portfolio career. As always, we want the session to be interactive. So if you have any questions, pop them in the chat, and we will we'll get to them as we go through the course of the presentation. So with that, I will pass over to you, Caroline. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris. So, fingers crossed, the technology all works. And I can also see the chat, so that's great. So, yes, thank you very much. I'm Caroline Hale. I run Hale Portfolio, and we are a team of ladies, actually, no particular reason why, but we provide flexible part-time FD services and also bookkeeping services. I set the business up in 2017. Prior to that, as Chris had said, I qualified with PricewaterhouseCoopers as an ICAEW, and I spent 5 years in audit with them. I got poached by one of my clients, Tetley Tea, and became their group financial controller. And then I went in 2006 to Centrica, and I spent 6 years with them in various different roles. That was where I got a chance to move into commercial finance jobs, supporting the directors of the business, business plans, forecasting, rather than just compliance accounting. And then in 2012, I relocated to North Yorkshire, and I took on being part-time FD of my family's business, which is a small metal manufacturing business in Elland, in West Yorkshire. And I still am FD of that business, but in 2017, as my kids got a bit older, I decided to set up Hale Portfolio, which started off just being myself, working with a variety of different companies. And I then took on a couple of ladies that work for me, providing bookkeeping services, because I saw a need with some of my clients. They needed more help and they couldn't afford me to do it, and they didn't need me, it was bookkeeping. So that's sort of me and Hale Portfolio. What I'm going to cover today is sort of the experience and personal qualities that are useful for being a portfolio FD, ways to find clients, which is what I get asked a lot about, and practical considerations. In this section, I'm going to cover off IR35 because that is a conversation that comes up quite a bit. Talk about the benefits and challenges, and then we have got time at the end for questions. However, if you do want to put them in the chat as you think about them, if I manage to see them while I'm talking, I'll try and cover them off, but we'll definitely have a chat at the end to sort of answer any further questions that are coming along. Hope that's all right with everyone. So, experience and knowledge. If you're all on an FD recruit call, I'm going to generally assume you're all qualified accountants. Effectively, my route, I did a degree in science, went into the Big Four, qualified with ICAEW. Portfolio FDs, I know very well, are also ACCA, CIMA. Which qualification it is isn't essential, but a client will be looking for you to have a qualification of some sort. It gives that sort of level of reassurance to a client that it's what they're looking for. They do expect it. What sort of experience would you need to make the move? For me personally, I had Big Four audit, multinationals, in-house in large corporates. I had accounting, business development, controls roles. I then made the move into an SME world. For me, I wouldn't have gone straight into being a SME portfolio FD from a large corporate, but I've seen many that have done that and it's worked well. So long as you're aware of the constraints that an SME has, you can't have a team of finance people to give you segregation of duties. You've got to put different things in place because there's possibly only one finance person working in-house at the business. I think I've also worked, I know portfolio FDs that have gone straight from practice, but that's normally worked more when it's been a smaller practice where they've been working with SMEs, so they've got a knowledge of what those businesses need. I would say moving straight from a big four straight into doing portfolio FD work on SMEs is a bit too far of a movement. And I would say if you've only really done tax rolls, it's probably a bit too far of a movement. I see a portfolio FD as really a generalist rather than a specialist. Your clients are going to have an external accountant that does their accounts, tax returns and their statutory accounts. And I don't provide any of those services. It's not my happy place in any way, shape or form. So I know that I've got an accountant I can go and talk to about that specific client if something changes in what they're doing. If they're doing something new types of transactions, how are we going to put that through the accounts? What's the impact from a VAT perspective? What's the impact of those sort of things? I see someone's asked a question, Nick, with regards to working in sales and purchases of businesses. I've personally not done that, but I do know that when you're working more on the VC equity-backed businesses, then that kind of experience is really useful and sometimes essential. If you get into the private equity and that kind of work that comes from for portfolio FDs, they will be looking for that experience of having led an exit, management buyouts, or a sale of a business in some way, shape or form. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. For me, it's around, people also asked, you have to have industry experience. For me, with the clients I've taken on a farming client. I had never worked with farming before in my life, but I was able to pick it up really quickly. So that ability to have, if you've only ever worked in one particular industry, then you might struggle. But for me, I've worked in retail, manufacturing, engineering. I've now worked in farming, science, technology. It's that ability to just sort of turn your hand to most things. If you're willing to learn and willing to find out more stuff, then chances are you'll be absolutely fine. You don't have to have specific industry knowledge. A lot of portfolio interim work requires PE background. Yes, yeah, it is chicken and egg. How do you break into it in the first place? I'll be honest, I've not broken into that particular egg, but I do know that there are certain venture capital ones that will work and go, and they'll look at the experience that you have got and you can explain how that's similar to. And they may very well give you a chance. I've not needed to go down that route. I've found different types of work. But yeah, it can be difficult because you're there looking at a CV and going, well, I've not got the one thing that I need on that. But I think there's a matter of talking to the recruiter, talking to the VC, talking and just explaining what you have done that would be relevant. With regards to personal qualities, quite a lot of these have are things that, in all honesty, are absolutely the same between being an FD on one company as being an FD on multiple companies. Strong communicator. You've got to be able to tell the story of the business through the numbers. It's not just about presenting a set of numbers and going, well, there you go. You've got to be able to explain what it means to people. You've got to be able to decipher it, tell the story, but also you've got to be an incredibly good listener. Quite a few of my managing directors or CEOs, I'm their sounding board. I'm the person they'll come to, sometimes just to grumble about their team, because they can't grumble to the team about their team. They'll come to me to go, well, I'm thinking about doing so and so. What do you think? Have you got any other people that you know that are doing this sort of thing at the moment? So it's been good to explain the financial numbers, but it's also good to listen to your owners. And I find a lot of the time they know the answer themselves. They just need the help to believe that that's the right answer. Flexibility. Your workload is not always going to be consistent. There will be busier and quieter times. You might have to quickly put in a piece of work that becomes urgent. You've got to be flexible. Confidence and self-belief. This I sort of link to the fact that you, as a portfolio FD, you have to go and find work. And I'll come on to how you go and find work on my next slide, but you've got to be able to go out there and talk to people. As accountants, we're not always the world's best at selling things. And genuinely, when I started, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel. Can I go and sell my services? Is anyone going to buy from me? Why on earth would they do that? But over time and experience, my confidence, my belief in what I'm doing has increased. But I think if you're somebody that really struggles with your own confidence and your own self-belief, there are other ways forward, as potentially working as a group of FDs as opposed to on your own. But it's something you do need to consider. Enjoying helping people and variety. For me, more than in a full-time FD role, portfolio FD roles, you've got a lot of different people, you've got a lot of different companies, you've got a lot of different issues, and you might be dealing with each of those any one day. You might deal with 2 or 3 of your clients in a day. So I loved in audit the fact that I was working with loads and loads of different clients. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the fact they had different issues. So I personally really enjoy variety. Organised and time management. You've got to take into account, you might be dealing with 3, 5 plus clients at a time. You've got to have a way of keeping their own to-do lists for those companies so that you don't miss something, so that you are on top of it. So you've got to be organised, you've got to find a way that works for you. And I'm not going to tell you how to do that because that's very personal. So for me, I do use a app to track my time, because now I no longer go to a client for a full day, which is what I did before COVID, but I don't anymore. I have an app which is free, called Toggle, and I just track my time. I thought I'd been over those days since leaving PwC, but no, I'm back to tracking time. But yeah, you've got to be organised. And thank you very much to the lady, whoever put on the thing about networking with corporate finance people. Very good idea, thank you. How long is a typical engagement? I sometimes start on project work that turns into ongoing. Sometimes project work is just project work. Most of my work is ongoing. And it might start off with sorting out a bit of a mess and then getting it so that they've got monthly management information, getting it so we then start doing a budget with them. And then it might be getting a full-time person recruited into the business to do the day-to-day, and then I'm just overseeing things. My clients do understand I'm not there 24/7. They have got their own businesses, and to be fair, owner business managers tend to be a little bit more work intensive, workaholics than people working in a business that they don't own, but that's just a natural situation. And to be honest, I suppose I am a little bit, and I do have one client that sometimes WhatsApps me while I'm watching a program at 10 o'clock at night. And if it's 2 seconds and I can answer it, then it's no bother. If it's more, I'll look at this tomorrow and come back to you. But yeah, and that's probably me not setting boundaries brilliantly. I'm sure if you were to say straight off, I only work these hours, people do understand. I think there's a lot more understanding nowadays about people's personal commitments than there were in the past. Hopefully that answers that question, Tim. How do you find work? Well, for me, I would say the starting point to that is, who do you want to work with? What industries, what size of business, what locations? And based on the answer to that, I would say that's where you're going to start. So for me, I actually am not overly worried about industry, size of business, because of my experience from I've got startups and pre-revenue startups all the way up to, I was working with a 40 million turnover group. And of course, having had the Centrica and the Tetley's background behind me, I've got multinational consolidation experience up to billions. So what I've determined is actually I want to work with people I like. And that's my biggest thing, which sounds very simple, but I think it's come with age that I've defined it in such a way. For me, networking has been key, just to get yourself out there. I found when I first started, because I'm in North Yorkshire, the concept of a portfolio or fraction FD was not something that people really understood. So I was actually even having to explain what one was. If you're more in the bigger cities, in London, then chances are then actually lots and lots of people know what a portfolio FD is. But I was even having to start at that point. I joined things like the Chamber of Commerce, professional networks. I went to regional ICAEW events. I would also say, don't discount your personal connections. One of my first clients was the sister of a friend from the school gates. We both had kids in the same year, and we were chatting, and it turned out her sister's business needed some extra help because the person that had been helping them was going to retire. My dad has actually found me a client in the last year or so, which did slightly surprise me. But yeah, these things come from slightly bizarre places. What you have to remember with networking is it's just a conversation, and it's about building a long-term relationship with somebody. You're not going to get something straight away. They need to know that you're going to keep turning up to an event. You're going to have to do what you say you're going to do. You're going to have to help them as well. So it's about saying, actually, I know so-and-so, and actually, I think you and him would really get on, and I think that would be good for your business if you met them. So you've got to sort of be open to helping people before they're going to then help you. I get quite a lot of my work through accountancy firms. So a lot of them understand what a portfolio FD is. They recognise that if I sort out a mess at a client, then actually the recovery on their fee is going to improve. They also generally don't have the staff levels that enable them to go and sort out the problem or find the underlying cause for that problem. So I do work quite a bit with accountancy firms. I also work with accountancy firms who do provide sort of things like monthly management information for their clients, but actually they recognise as that client gets bigger, they're going to need more than they can do, or they might not have capacity within their team. So I do help in those scenarios as well. I also network with other professionals, finance professionals, insolvency practitioners. Insolvency practitioners also now really includes business recovery specialists. And with some of them, you get a business before it's gone too far. So I've helped them sort of sort out the finance staffing, sort out the systems, processes, got things so that we actually know that it is a good business, as opposed to it being a basket case. So I work with them. Some bankers that I've worked with on other clients have then recommended me to some of their other clients. There are investment houses, so corporate finance within accountancy firms, or VCs, equity. If you network with those sort of people and work with them, then you will move more towards that private equity side of the spectrum. Portfolio FDs might sound like an odd one. Why on earth would you network with your competition? Well, the reality is most portfolio FDs can only do a certain amount of work because they've got a finite amount of time. And actually, if they get leads for things but they can't do it, or it's in an industry that they know you're more of a specialist in, then having a network of portfolio FDs that are independent is really good. Yeah, I completely agree, Malcolm. Letting people know that you're looking for work is key. And my personal networks, they've always surprised me, because it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. The side of the netball court, the side of the rugby pitch, you name it, you can do those things. Specialist recruiters, FD Recruit, I know, does do this work. So if you want to have this as more of a interview than you've got to go and find things, then working through specialist recruiters is a very good idea. And then there are large chains of FD, the CFO Centre, there are others out there. They are set up to do all this kind of work, and they help and support you. So if you don't want to be doing the networking yourself, if you don't want to be doing the sales, the finding it, then that might be the best route forward for you. Hopefully that has covered a lot of the questions that I get on how to find work. Cognizant of time, practical considerations. Number one, where are you physically going to work? Now, as I alluded to earlier on in the presentation, I started off pre-COVID going to client sites because I thought they were going to want to see me, and to start off with, they did. But actually, COVID meant that we all went and worked from home, and I have a big monitor here rather than just working off my one laptop, and it's much more efficient for me to work at home. So I've got my own office, and this is where I work 95% of the time. I do sometimes go to client sites for sort of management meetings, but that's relatively rare. Practicing certificate. I can only talk for ICAEW. I don't have any knowledge of ACCA or SEMA, but for me, ICAEW, excuse me, this has just decided to start making a noise and it's annoying me. That's better. ICAEW for portfolio FDs is a little bit of a grey area. There is a when we come towards the end of the presentation, I will put a link in to the current guidance that ICAEW have got. For me, my team provides bookkeeping, we do VAT returns, we do that sort of stuff. So we definitely fall into the requirement of needing a practicing certificate. If you're purely doing budgeting and forecasting, for some reason, they sort of think you don't need one. But for me, I think it's much safer to have one. And conversations I've had with recruiters in the past is they see that as more of a statement that you're actually going to be carrying on doing portfolio work, as opposed to you're doing it temporarily before finding another FD role. I'll come back to this when we start on IR35 in a second, Ramal. If you have a practicing certificate under ICAEW, professional indemnity insurance is essential anyway. It's the two go hand in hand. But to be honest, I think it's something that I would highly recommend to anyone doing this, because we're human and we do make mistakes. Having that insurance there is a safety net. IR35, the joy of IR35. There is loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff out there on the web that I would say it's worth having a look at. But advice that I got given by an accountancy practice when I was setting up, they gave me a bit of a checklist of things that I needed to consider for each and every one of the roles that I was taking on. And it was things like the ability to provide an alternate, the right to reject work, that you didn't take employment benefits, that you decide when and where you work, you decide what work is required. And to be honest, with all of my clients, I do basically go, right, this is the situation, this is what's going on, right, we need to do da 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 da. And they largely sit there and go, okay, fine, how long is that going to take? And I go, I'll do it as quick as I possibly can. They brought me in to be a specialist in finance because they don't have a specialist in finance. So it's also things like you provide your own equipment, you provide services to multiple clients. However, when you're starting out, it's very difficult to tick that box. But I was told by my accountants for my family's business that wasn't necessarily an issue because you've got the intent of setting up more than a portfolio, more than one client. You incur the cost for your own CPD. Any issues with your work, you correct at your own cost. You own your own business premises, insurance, branding, your own team of staff. Not all of these are essential for each and every project. One of the things they tend to prefer is that you're paid for a piece of work as opposed to an hourly rate. Now, I do charge by an hourly rate. My experience, I tend to get involved with quite a few businesses that are in a bit of a mess. And I haven't got the faintest idea if it's going to take me 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months to try and sort through that mess. So I'm not going to say, oh, I'll do it for X, because it could be a much bigger thing than that. My list is not exhaustive. I would say your own professional body will have guidance about IR34, 35 even. If I can just scroll back up, I'm going to just try and find that specific question. Large German business to perform a transformation, an interim assignment of 3 to 5 days per week for the next. I would say if you're doing the majority of your time on one thing, that sounds more like an interim contract. Now, I don't tend to do those kind of pieces of work. And I know there's a lot where they say a lot of adverts will say outside of IR35, considered outside of IR35 and things like that. I think you probably need to maybe speak to your own professional body just to check how they feel about that. For me, I'd be saying it gets a lot closer to being inside IR35 if you're only working on one thing. But hopefully that helps. Find a substitute if you're a sole practitioner. I have, as I said earlier, I've got a group of other independent portfolio FDs. And if, for example, I was incapacitated, we've all got a bit of a sort of handshake agreement that we'd help each other out. So it's not formal. Have I needed to use a substitute? No, I haven't. However, when I have been asked about various pieces of work, if it's very industry specific, I've actually gone, do you know what? You need to talk to so-and-so because they're an industry specialist in that area. So you're probably better off talking to them. And that's even when I have had my own work. I've had time that I could have done it, but it didn't feel right to take that work because it was so industry specific. But yeah, having do I provide an alternative? No, I don't most of the time. Could I? Yes, I could. I could find someone. Do you think it helps a lot by also offering bookkeeping and VAT returns? I went into providing bookkeeping and VAT return services because my clients couldn't do it themselves and they kept mucking it up, to be honest. So I ended up sorting out the mess that they've created, and then I found that I've got a few ladies that I know locally that needed some more bookkeeping work, although it does turn out those trying to find good bookkeepers now is like trying to find hen's teeth. And I brought them in. They work for me on a hour, however much time they have got, they will provide. And I bill my clients for that work. I think it has helped because quite a few of my clients are still at a size where they only need part-time bookkeeping services. But I do have clients where I've got a full-time finance person in place. So obviously I don't provide those services in those scenarios, but it's useful to have that flexibility. I've found that it was needed. Financial nest egg. You're not going to get work unless you have gone on to gardening leave and you've been looking for it while you've been on gardening leave, but the chances are you're not going to find it straight away. It could take up to 6 to 12 months. Personally, I was lucky in that I am still finance director of my family's business, so I still have a salary from that company because this comes back slightly to IR35. I'm a director on Companies House. I have got shares in that business, so that one I'm definitely on payroll. My other work, I do it through Hale Portfolio and I am off payroll. But I've got, yes, I am registered with HMRC from anti-money laundering. That comes when you get your practicing certificate and it's linked to that. Financial nest egg. It could be, there are loads of ways you can do this. You might be being made redundant and you get a payout from that perspective. You might have a personal inheritance that comes along. You might have been brilliant and saved enough. But I would say you do need to have a financial nest egg because that enables you to choose the work you go to as opposed to necessarily panicking and taking stuff that you might not have otherwise wanted. LinkedIn and websites. LinkedIn is the main professional social media. I use it, I post articles on it, I interact with my network remotely on it. You have to be on it. Website, this is one where I know clients have gone and looked at it as a shop window to find out what I do, what I offer. It hasn't given me work. It hasn't been something that has brought people to me, but it is something that people have looked at and have said, you've got to have one. They don't have to be difficult, complicated. Mine just sort of introduces me and the team. It has a few testimonials and case studies of work that I've done. It has links to the articles that have been written, and that's pretty much it. CPD, you have to do it for being a member of a body, a professional body anyway, but actually you're going to be advising your clients on new accounting software or new processes, new procedures, you name it. A lot of my CPD is spent keeping up to date with tech. It's not necessarily spent keeping up to date with all the accounting standards because actually I would go to the accountants to get advice on that. I definitely don't keep up to date with tax legislation. But that's the good thing about ICAEW. You do CPD in the things that are relevant for the role that you are doing. With regards to the bookkeeping services, I invoice the clients on behalf and I do make a small margin on that work and I do oversee it. So I am reviewing. So hopefully that answers your question, Richard. No, why the slides? Right, benefits and challenges. My dog's on here, so gratuitous cuteness. But also it's an element of work-life balance. So for me, I went into this because I wanted interesting and challenging work with great businesses and owners, but was flexible around my family commitments. So I set the business up when my kids were 7 and 5. I needed the ability to take my kids to after-school activities and play dates with their friends and not feel like I was failing absolutely everybody. So that's why I did what I did. There are And my kids are now 14 and 12, and quite frankly, would really prefer I wasn't anywhere near them and that they could just spend their time on an electronic device. So I now work full time. I now have more clients. I've been able to flex what I do. COVID happened. My husband couldn't work. I was able to find more work and fill our family's financial position because I was able to do more work during that time period. Some people that do this might very well have elderly parents and they've got caring duties. They might be personally coming towards retirement, but they don't actually want to stop completely. There are loads and loads and loads of reasons to consider a portfolio career. For me, it was kids. I love having variety of clients. I love having the flexibility. I love being able to go and take my dog for a walk at lunchtime and not worry that someone's going to be antsy with me. There is a big downside, and I won't candy coat it. Fundamentally, if you're doing your job right, you're sort of making yourself redundant over time, because either there's a mess that's been there and you've sorted it out and they don't need you anymore, or the business has gone from strength to strength and they've grown and actually they need a full-time FD, and I've had to basically replace myself. I've had to recruit my own replacement. But you get to go on to do something else. There is a fear that comes with that, and you think, oh my God, is something going to turn up? And that's real. But you tend to find that two things all turn up at the same time. It's like London buses. But it's real, and I would be false in not saying that that's there. There's a question about tips for structuring a CV to a right. Yes, Andrew. I got asked, if you're a member of ICAEW, you therefore get access to CABA, C-A-B-A, which is the sort of charity arm. When I first set up, got some CV writing tips from the CABA people that will look at your CV. So my CV is not written in a chronological order like you would for a normal job, I suppose. And to be fair, they suggest this for people who've got further through their career with more and more experience, shall I say, whereby you start to put your CV into experience types. So you've done this kind of work and this kind of work and this kind of work. Christine, Chris, you might know the right terminology for what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it's probably more a list of projects completed. And I think the key things that need to go on there are the sector or the industry, ownership structure. So you can obviously identify if it's PE backed, owner managed. Turnover is a good one. It just provides context. So when I'm looking at a CV, if I've got a client who's looking for a portfolio FD who's worked in the retail sector and has been working with an owner manager, and this is a 25 million turnover business, I can easily see, okay, well, this project is relatable, this one is. So I think that's kind of the key information that I would include on there if I was putting a CV together. And one other thing, actually, value add. So where have you saved money? Where have you saved time? Where you can quantify your achievements. I think it's really valuable because it says to an owner, well, they've gone into this business and they've saved, X number of days on the month-end process, or they've driven revenue up by 10%, that type of thing.
Thanks, Chris. To be fair, that's the point at which I get to the any questions anyway. So I think I'm going to just stop sharing and we'll go from there. Oh, no, don't want a new share. Oh, at last. Give me 1 second. Hopefully that's brought us all back together.
Yeah.
Sorry. I've neglected the benefits of networking with other people. Yeah, so that you know, I'm more than happy to connect with anybody that's on this call. My LinkedIn, you can find Caroline Hale or Hale Portfolio. You should get to me that way. And I'm more than happy to network. How did I decide how much to charge? Oh, right. That one was difficult to start off with, and it's become less difficult over time. I started off So I started off back in 2017, and I charged a day rate of 500 quid a day. That's what I did back then. And I was going to somewhere for a full day. But over time, I've increased that, partly because I value my ability more than I did when I started. I know more portfolio FDs. We do sort of talk about it a bit. One of the things you do need to take into account is if you are going to work through a recruiter, you tend to take a bit off that your day rate, because there's their fee in there. But yeah, it's that's how I started off. I would say there's a lot out there now, because there's now more jobs out there. You can sort of get a feel for what would be reasonable. And it all depends on your area, because if you're down in London, then pretty much put a zero on the end of what I charge. But otherwise, it depends on where you are. I'm rural North Yorkshire, so but I do have clients down in St Albans. COVID enabled me to actually work with clients pretty much all over the country. There was a question about setting up. I am a limited company. So that's how I set up. More than month-end duties, how do you manage? So the work that I do falls into a couple of categories. I tend to end up getting clients that are a bit of a basket case. I seem to have some sort of sadomasochistic attraction to clients that need to just have worms straightened out. So those clients, I find myself doing stuff that I would say is generally beneath my capability, but actually no one else has taken the bull by the horns, therefore someone's got to sort it out. So I spend quite a bit of time working through that then gets straightened out. I then put someone in to sort of turn the handle on a day-to-day basis, and I move more into an oversight role. And I tend to find that my clients are so pleased with what I've done that they then sort of keep me on as a non-exec director-y type role, just to check that the financial stuff's still being done okay. So hopefully that's sort of how background is an FD with a large degree of M&A. I think these are real market, sorry, with a large degree of M&A. I don't have a large degree of M&A, but there are parts of the industry which will want that. So if you've got it, definitely work more towards the corporate finance contacts.
Sorry, Nick was just asking how to network with owner managers who are potentially looking at selling their business.
Owner managers don't network. Genuinely, they're a pain in the backside. They have got their heads stuck in their own businesses. And part of the reason they need you is because they can't find their way out of the door because of all the work on top of them. That's why I get work, not direct from owner managers. I get work from generally their accountants that go, that you've really got to talk to Caroline. She'll be able to help you out. If you're dying under all of this work, you need to improve your processes, your procedures, that sort of stuff.
I would say as well, LinkedIn is a big one. If you mentioned about having a LinkedIn profile, but personal branding on LinkedIn, and making sure you're connecting with the right types of people, posting on there, showing that you're a subject matter expert as a portfolio FD, and just getting your brand out there, I think is really important.
Yeah. Do you ever say no to a client, and what's the warning sign? Yes, I do say no to a client. That's why when I said earlier on, I have actually defined the clients I want to work with as people I like. I have ended up going and having meetings, and partway through the meeting gone, there's absolutely no way on God's earth I can spend more time in a room with this person. Oh my God. And genuinely, then you come into the slightly wishy-washy of the, well, I don't necessarily have the industry experience, or I'm terribly sorry, but I think your needs are going to be greater than the time I have to commit at this moment in time. Anything that effectively extricates you from what you think is actually going to be a car crash. Because at the end of the day, you've got to take into account, you have got that professional indemnity insurance. If they're an arse, and you just think they're going to be a right pain, then just walk away. That's what I mean about having a financial nest egg. if you've got that, you can go out of that meeting going, that is so not worth it. I'm not doing it. And you get that gut feeling. Every single one of you will have that gut feeling from working with clients, working with colleagues in your own offices. You'll have those people that just leave you going, oh my God. Listen to your gut. How do we structure an assignment? Would it be based on, say, 1 day a week? Then would you expect to show evidence of time spent? So I do bill. I bill. I track my time. When I started out, I was going to clients. It was very easy to say, I've been here a day. Hi. And doing my billing at the end of the month was which days did I go where? Whereas COVID, that threw it out the window. And yes, I went back to tracking my time. I'd stopped when I left PwC, and it was a bit of a wrench to go back to it, but it then enabled me to figure out what the hell I was billing. As I say, I work on things that tend to be a bit of a mess, and I've no idea how big a mess it's going to be until I've got my hands on it. So I'm not going to commit to a fixed fee to do that, because and then I don't give them a copy of my time tracking. They work on the basis that they work with me over a period of time. They know I'm going to be good for my word. And I believe they get value for what I do. I manage to do things a lot quicker than other people would. Yes, I charge at a higher rate, but I'm probably doing it twice as quickly. So that's all evens out. First appointments to go and meet people, no, I don't charge for that. I don't charge. I do proper engagement letters. I use the draft ones that ICAEW give you. You have to edit them down a lot to get them applicable to be a portfolio FD. The ones on the website are full of stuff that are really for main practice accountants. So that's a bit frustrating, but you can get there with them. And I don't tend to charge until we're getting to an engagement letter perspective. I don't know. Are there any questions that have come up on here that I've missed?
I don't think so.
I've pop them in again if they are. I'm more than happy.
How many clients do you typically have at any one time?
Probably too many. My clients, I've got about 6 at the moment. Some of which I will literally do something once a quarter on them. But some of which I'll be looking at 2 or 3 times a week. And by looking at it, that could be a full day one day, and half a day another, and an hour another day. It all depends on their need. And the thing is as well, your experience with that client will change over that business's life cycle. So I've got a pre-revenue startup that's just had to go through another round of getting funding. So there was a hell of a lot of work coming up to them going out to get that funding, because they needed all updated models and things that they could share with their investors and stuff. So, but the rest of the time, it's purely a monthly management information that takes me half a day to do. So yeah.
Question there for us: how does FD Recruit operate in this space? So we're a recruitment agency, so we have clients who'll come to us to say that they're looking to engage a part-time or a portfolio FD for X number of days per month. So then we would come out to you as portfolio FDs, run the assignment past you, and then present your profile to the client. So usually it's on a day rate basis, more often than not outside IR35, and we just charge a margin on top of the day rate, and then we kind of have a contract with you and a contract with the client, and you would invoice us and we invoice the client.
I haven't been able to see everyone's name, so I'm not able to go into LinkedIn and try and connect with people. So please feel free to connect with me. Normally when I do these things, I sort of go, oh, and I do that while you're presenting is a bit tricky. But yeah, I would say the institutes are getting more savvy on what portfolio FDs are. ICAEW has ICAEW has got like a portfolio careers sort of group to it now, and I have spoken on a couple of their events in the past. That's a nice network, but obviously only applicable if you're an ICAEW. I've no idea if the other institutes have got similar things. But yeah, when I started back in 2017, those didn't really exist. I mean, I know it's been going for quite a long time, especially, as I say, around London area, but outside of there, then we're sort of a weird breed that not many people understand. But I've loved it. I absolutely love it. I love the people I work with. I love my clients. I love solving problems. And I like that I make a real difference to them. If you're in big corporates where you can't see the whole picture, and I've been there, when you're in a small, medium-sized business and you're making a decision, actually, it really makes a difference. And that sense of purpose is what gets me up in the morning.
Well, you see the impact of what you do, don't you? Whereas in those large corporates, you really don't. So
it's like turning the QE2 round. You can't do it. Whereas small, medium-sized businesses, it's a bit more like a little topper.
Yeah. I'm conscious of time, and I'm conscious that there are questions that we've probably missed, actually. Someone's asked if we can provide a list of attendees. Can we do that, Christiane? Can we share the list?
Well, unfortunately, we're not allowed to share people's information. However, if everybody wants, you'll be putting a post on LinkedIn this afternoon, won't you, Christine? Which we'll share that post in our thank you follow-up email. So if anyone who's happy to have their details and to kind of link in with other people, either like comments on it or like makes themselves known, that might be a way of, it's just we're able to with GDPR regulations. Unfortunately.
To answer Richard's question, because I see that come up, I charge by the hour because I don't go somewhere. I did originally charge by days, but I now charge by the hour because I can work on 3-4 different clients in a day.
And then just that last one, and then we'll have to wrap up. Tim's asked about systems. I'm presuming you use the client systems, because
I go in, I use the client systems until I fall out with it sufficiently that I manage to convince them to move. My main clients are either on Xero or Sage. Those are the two that I tend to find. And where they are on Xero, I'm normally a much happier lady.
Perfect. Thank you, Caroline. It's been really, really informative, and hopefully it's provided a lot of insight for anyone who's considering making the move. The only other thing to mention, I don't know if you're aware of the Guild, we have a group called the FD and CFO Network. We've got, I think, probably about 1,300 members across the UK. There'll be a link on the email that you've received after the session. Feel free to join, because there's quite a lot of portfolio FDs on there. You can post questions, you can network with people, so you can connect with other portfolio FDs via that group. I'll put a link, a message on LinkedIn, so if anyone wants to comment, I can make connections between people as well to get around the GDPR issue. So with that, thank you everyone for joining, and yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it.